Greetings. We are back, the EA View, and here I am with my panel of lovely ladies, my team of women, and we're here to discuss evolutionary astrology and looking at the courage of Aries this month. We've been away for a bit. Well, Venus retrograde in Capricorn will do it to you. It's finally out of its shadow, thank goodness. And we are starting anew. First sign of the zodiac is Aries. And we are fired up and ready to talk about courageous people and what is going on in the world. So welcome back, you all. We've got Chahal from London, England. Welcome.
Hi.
Deva Green, you've got to unmute yourself there, but Deva Green, welcome back.
Thank you.
Rose Marcus from Vancouver, Canada. Hello, Rose.
Hello.
Stacie Pazura, the Utah girl. Welcome back, y'all. And so it's been a while and it feels really good to gather with you again. And this red image, just, I can feel it. I can feel spring here. I'm sure in, well, the Southern Hemisphere, they're experiencing something else. But we are ready to roll and ready to get going on a new series. And a big passion for why we started this series to begin with, not only to come together with like-minded others who are passionate about this work as we are, is because we're fascinated by people that are actually following their fingerprint in the world. They are living out their purpose. They are living fearlessly. And there are some fearless souls we're going to talk about today. So anyway, anything else you guys want to add before we get into our first segment? Anything that's, you know, feeling Aries like in your life at the moment? Nope, everybody's quiet.
Yeah.
All right, we do have a lot to share. So here's our Aries Rams for today. And of course, it is all about being able to express yourself with, you know, independence and bravery and initiation, determination, remembering that Mars is the ruling planet for Aries, and it is the lead point in your evolution. It is the energy that you feel instinctually about things in your life. You're feeling instinctually drawn to go in this direction, or to be with this person in partnership, to take on this profession, to study this material. It's instinctual in you. You don't think about it. You just move in the direction of those desires. And when we think about instinct, we also think about what do we do in a flight or fight situation. There's a war going on in our world right now, unfortunately. And there's a lot of people that are showing up and standing up in ways that they might not have otherwise. But sometimes you don't have, it's like not thinking about what is the right thing to do, but just doing it. You're acting on impulse. And I came across a quote that I love by John Wayne of all people, but he said, "Courage is being scared to death, but standing up anyway." Of course, a lot of people in Ukraine that live in Ukraine or who are freeing Ukraine, people that are flying into Ukraine to help them, I'm sure they're scared to death. But stronger than that fear is a desire to survive, a desire to protect, a desire to help other people that don't have the means to help themselves. So I want to celebrate all of those people that are showing up and all of those people that are accessing the courage to do whatever that they need to do for their families, for their friends, for their country. So we want to share a few of our favorite stories about what's happening over there. And Rob, I'm going to start with you.
Well, with Aries being an action-oriented sign, we tend to being impulsive, but it can also be constructive action over violence and aggression. And a story that I personally came across was regarding a group of, there's a station in Poland on the border of Ukraine that's welcoming the refugees and families and mothers and kids. And an image across Twitter showing prams and strollers being available to the mothers coming into the country. And when that image went viral, a lot of people started to leave donations of clothes, toys, just anything they felt that would be useful to the people coming in. And a beautiful moment was when mothers decided to leave notes of encouragement for other mothers coming in. And that would have been something that was more instinctual, I feel, in terms of constructive action, or we're just leaving stuff just empty-handed. But then finding, you know, coming into a foreign country, especially after having to leave your home and your security behind, just getting support and encouragement from others with just that hot, warming feeling. And that's the opposite balance of Aries being Libra, relationships and compassion, and just it was just that whole constructive side of stuff. And I was just like, that's just beautiful.
You know, we think about Aries as part of the cardinal square.
Yeah.
And a Cancer is very much obviously a part of that. And that's, you know, nurturing these mothers and mothering these mothers and helping them nurture their children and inspiring them with words that may be helping them. Constructive action is very much an Aries expression. And Aries is not just about courage, it's about so many other things. But having the impetus to follow through on your instinct to make a difference for somebody in a time like this. So that was an excellent example, beautiful example. Thank you for that. What about you, Deva?
Yeah, my favorite story from Ukraine had to do with people coming together and also helping the animals that were impacted by the bombings. And of course, people needing to just up and go at a minute's notice. And people are going back and they're looking for animals and they're helping pets that were affected at the zoo that can't get out and people can't care for them, and pooling money to get large quantities of food, and easing restrictions to help people get their pets across borders. And for me, that's Aries too, because it's breaking new ground. It's not just run. that's that part of Aries is, of course, having to respond, but it's not just fleeing. It's having the impetus to act upon your instinct, which is to go back and get the ones who can't help themselves. Of course, our little animal friends, they can't protect themselves the way that we can. So I felt that that was a good story for Aries in terms of a new direction and having the courage to help those that can't help themselves.
Perfect. I love that. Thank you for that. That was really wonderful to see too, how many people were rallying in those moments to help the animals. Saw a bunch of footage on that. Heartwarming. All right, Rose, what about you? What was your favorite? One of your favorites?
Well, the stories of acts of courage are unbelievable, and all of the people that have been inspired to come forward. And I just really I was so impressed by the 7-year-old in the bomb shelter who sang from Frozen, and it's let it go, let it go. But it's that whole point of standing in your own center. And when you stand in your own center like that, that ability to, what she did was she inspired everyone else, and she went from that bomb shelter to on stage singing the Ukrainian anthem at a benefit concert. And, it's just bringing everybody together as one. We have to find ways to raise ourselves up, fear and, all of the things that are going on nowadays. But, somewhere in there, inspiration and courage have to be our lead.
Absolutely. Wow, that was something about 7. It's every 7 years we've got a Saturn square happening, right? So again, part of this cardinal archetype, and really what this 7-year-old is living in her reality and her time frame and the choices she is making to make a difference. Courageous. She would be a good person to highlight, perfect person to highlight today. Wish we had her birth information.
I think she's got a fantastic singing career ahead of her.
She sure does. Talk about being able to get her voice out there and to have people, that's like instant marketing, right? Being the best of a bad situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not why she's doing it. But,
yeah.
To sing a song of peace. So Stacie, what about you?
I think what has really inspired me with all of these events is the courageous leadership of Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine. As I think most of us know, he's very new to the scene. For a lot of years, he was kind of in the TV industry and actually played in a role as the Ukraine president for, I think it was 5 years it was airing. It was very popular. And now here he is, president, and one of the most powerful and largest militaries in the world is deciding to come and dominate. And this is one of those moments where you find out what you're made of. You know, this is one of those moments where when you say, you know, these are my values and these are the things that I'm going to stand for. Well, you know, it's moments like these where you are able to prove it, or, you know, sometimes you don't have the courage and run away. But this man, so courageous, you know, like he was given opportunities to be extracted from Ukraine, to be, you know, so that he'd be safe. And he said no, he declined. So he has remained there in the city with the people. He's been really active on social media to just like keep that connection with the Ukrainians. And I mean, everyone just is so proud of him. All of the people are just so, I'm sure there's, you know, various opinions, but by and large, he's just such an inspiration. And I personally am just very impressed by his composure and his willingness to stick with his values and not sacrifice those things in this moment of survival.
That's leadership for you, Aries, right? You know, and you know, you see him on the news all the time, and it's like he's constantly at it. You know, next, you know, just he's constantly at it, and that's the Aries too. He's just gonna, you know, like the ram. You know, I'm gonna push until I get my needs met, right? In what we all agree is the most positive way on behalf of the Ukrainian people, his country.
Yeah, one thing that he has taught everybody, it's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog.
Excellent.
It's like a mark between.
Yeah, and just to reiterate that Aries point, it's like showing up for the moment.
Yeah.
This wasn't foreseen. So here he is, and this is what he's doing, and I'm just very impressed.
I'm happy that you included him in this, in our sharing of stories. He's frontline in all of this. And without a leader like that, you know, it may have gone another way, right?
We need one. We need one good one, right? You know, and it all works from there. Stacie, you have to turn your volume up.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. All right. What a role model. So let's move into our next segment. We've got a signature transit of the month here being an eclipse on the 30th of this month. And as you know, the eclipses come in pairs and they arrive every 6 months. And so the last new moon eclipse, it was a total eclipse, was December 4th last year. So it's a little less than 6 months. But approximately 6 months is when the energy is traveling. And so a new moon eclipse, a solar eclipse on the 30th of this month is incredibly supportive, I feel, and auspicious, although we'll see, you know, what's going to go on in the world between now and then. But I just absolutely love this lineup of Pisces energy, and in particular how Mars, which rules the sign of Aries, is sextiling this new moon, and Sun and Moon in Taurus, and Uranus, Mars and Pisces in this context. Rose, what do you feel is this most significant?
Well, and let me say we're looking at a signature transit of the month, and this is the month of April, and April is opening on a new moon in Aries that has Chiron conjunct it in Aries. So we've got a real intensity dial-up starting the month. On the 12th of April, we have a momentous Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which is, you know, a lot of us have talked about it. I've done a presentation on that as well, too. And then we get to the end of the month with the first of 2 eclipses. It's eclipse season. So this is incredibly dynamic. And first of all, eclipses are accelerators, right? You know, they are intensified new moons or full moons. And this is a solar eclipse. It's a partial eclipse. The partial eclipse is seen in the chart by the fact that there's a large orb between the luminaries, the sun and moon, and the nodal axis. This is 12 degrees sun moon from the north node. And this eclipse is aspecting the north node in Taurus. So of course, Taurus has everything to do with our values. What has value and meaning has everything to do with our survival, and so forth. And really big imprints with this. The eclipse is aspecting Uranus. Both the sun and moon are going to trigger Uranus in a few days after this eclipse. Eclipses will generate an event when they occur, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen on the date, right? So we're watching this eclipse, and eclipses are energizing before they happen. The grouping of planets that you see in Pisces right there, and notice that Venus and Jupiter are conjunct. Now, Venus is in the sign of Pisces, and that's the higher octave of Neptune, the lower octave of Pisces archetype. So Venus is very important for a couple of reasons in this chart. One, it is the ruler of the eclipse. Two, it's the ruler of the north node, one half of the nodal axis, the lunar nodes. And three, it is aspecting Jupiter. And let me just say that there, in looking at this chart as a moving picture, there's a old horary, or not old, but there's a horary rule which is called translation of light, and that is a planet that's picking up the energy as it's transiting. It's picking up from one and bringing that energy to another. And Venus has moved from Neptune and is moving to Jupiter in this chart right here, which is fascinating because it is stimulating the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction that we had on the 12th, right? So it's continuing that trigger for that. Mars sitting in Pisces is going to come forward and conjunct Neptune and move along here. So we've got an extension of the Jupiter-Neptune transit that is so special, 166-year transit. And so with Neptune and Jupiter increases greatly. Jupiter is the planet of increase. It greatly increases the potentials of the moment. And Venus and Jupiter, again, is, incredibly increasing the potentials of the moment. So we have so much creative energy here, so much opportunity. And Jupiter is a planet of belief systems. And with all of this, energy here, the eclipse moving towards a conjunction with Uranus in Taurus on the north node, which is the evolutionary forward, it's all about re-envisioning, right? And it's all about reclaiming faith and reclaiming hope and finding inspiration. What I've said about the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is even a subtle shift can produce a seismic change, like a tsunami, right? And we've got Venus and Jupiter together supporting this solar eclipse. So I think the potential here is truly, truly enormous. We're very attached to our survival, issues, whatever they may be. And Taurus is an archetype where we can get stuck, or we can be limited, and we hold back and we resist and we do all of that kind of stuff. This transit allows for that kind of fluidity and for the ability to feel the energy fields around you. It's a really good transit for dreaming and aspiring. And what I say is, out of nothing comes something, right? Is at any moment you could have an incredible download that could change your whole perception on your personal reality. And there is always, in every moment, there's opportunity, right? You know, so opportunity is available. And Pisces, all that Pisces energy, we have to envision it first before we can create it. So this is a time frame that I think that look for inspiration, you know, in the quiet moments, you know, in the inner peace. And this is, you know, to create inner peace, you know, ask for messages in your dream cycle. A lot of people I know are dreaming nowadays, coming up with a lot, right? So I agree with you, Kristin. Anyone else want to input here in terms of what they see with the this transit?
I have a little more. I'll share too that, you know, Jupiter and Venus are the two most benevolent planets that we have, and the most generous in a way. And when they're beautifully aspected, then we are feeling better, feeling good. Obviously, Jupiter can exaggerate things that aren't positive, if that's what's being energized. But what I see with the Pisces, it could be too, as you mentioned, out of nothing comes something, Rose. It could be something that's hidden, right? With Pisces, it could be behind the scenes, backstage. You could have been praying for something your entire life. And maybe around this eclipse, it becomes tangible. It's Earth, it's Taurus. It's like, yes, I can feel it. I can touch it. I can have it. I can earn this. I can manifest this. I've earned this. And, you know, with Jupiter and Venus in Pisces, it can be like an answered prayer. It can feel like a guardian angel moment. It can allow you to ascend to greater heights if you've gone to the mat for many years and you're a spiritual seeker in depths as well. I mean, it can produce an unimaginable breakthrough. It is seamless, it is timeless, it is boundless. There is no limits to what this can produce. And it's not going to be that same for everybody. It all comes down to your desires, to your intentions, your actions in particular, your thoughts. Everything is contributing to this. And another point to mention is that with eclipses, they can be fated moments. So we don't know what's going to happen a lot of the times. It's the nature of the word eclipse. And it can be something phenomenal. It can also be something we don't want, but for the most part, or we don't think we want. But whatever it is, our soul is needing it to propel us forward. And so one thing that I know Rose and I both have talked about for many years on transit shows that we've done when we're looking at eclipses is that it does depend on how they are landing in your chart. Are they making any exact aspects, any contacts to planets in your chart? You will undoubtedly feel the energy in the ethers and in the world and the collective, but how it impacts your own life will vary depending on how these planets are aspecting your personal chart. And also anything that you have been fueling and driving in your life energetically. I mean, things aren't just going to come out of left field. There's going to be something that is come before all of this, linked with your own karma or the things that you've been driving in your own life. So it's interesting too, because Venus comes into a balsamic conjunction to Jupiter and then moves in front of it right around at the exact time of the eclipse. I mean, I don't know the exact time, Rose, maybe you do, but it's balsamic right before Jupiter and then right after the new moon, within a very short period of time, it could be 10 minutes, Venus moves in front of Jupiter to initiate, as the ruler of this eclipse and the North Node, this brand new cycle. So anybody else?
Yeah, as you were saying, depending on where it lands in your chart, that it can make inner resources or capacities that you weren't fully aware of or that you didn't value, you didn't see the full potential of, seeing that Venus Jupiter through the North Node being in Taurus. So all of a sudden, either through a shakeup, let's say, for example, South Node in Scorpio, a loss, or with Saturn being in Aquarius, some form of cataclysm or even trauma, and then through that it's almost like something becomes very visible in terms of what has meaning, what you need, what you don't need, that there may have been something that has been calling from the inside for quite a while to come out of the ethers and to be made tangible. And it's through that transit, or it's through that transition, that it becomes clear about how to bring that out or how to cultivate. So it can be too that sometimes through a major perspective change that we see things that we didn't. It's not necessarily, I guess the point is, it's not necessarily from the outside. It may not be that all of a sudden, you know, something from the external environment is sourcing you something. It's more something, I would say, that's being seen from the inside that wasn't seen in the same way. So like less is more. It could also happen that way. But it's that energy of, oh my gosh, this is something that my heart is truly calling, that I want to put energy towards, I want to devote. And from that springs the abundance. And then what you do need through looking at this, I mean, gosh, Venus and Jupiter, and then North Node and Taurus, it just almost feels like, ask if, you know, if it's something that is really coming from your heart, ask and you will, the abundance will be there. The magic or the potential of that transit. So perspective changes and what those can do.
Another point.
Go ahead, Rob.
Sorry, just another point. I think it's a day before, on April the 29th, Pluto actually goes retrograde. It stays
Yes,
in retrograde.
yes, it does. Yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yes, just the day before, right? You know, so that that intensifies the energy of this chart. And you know, Pisces, it's all about latent potential, hidden potential, and all of that energy there is whatever is on brew is about to make its presence known. You know, and it will do that according to the timing that, you know, how that's going to trigger your chart.
I mean, think about a Pluto stationing retrograde the day before an eclipse. Actually, on my chart, for some reason, on my solar fire, it's showing it stationed on the day of the eclipse as well. But it's almost like the world stops for a moment, right? Everything comes to a screeching halt. I have this great sports analogy, March Madness month here. Basketball, I'll give you, I love all sports, but I'll use this one. Let's say, imagine you're a player who's been sitting on the bench the whole season, and all of a sudden the star in the game breaks a leg or breaks an ankle or gets injured, right? That's the accident, Deva, you're talking about potentially. And then the kid sitting on the bench who is prepared, Mercury is just coming through a trine to Pluto and Taurus, and the Mercury here is in Gemini. And so the coach says, okay, kid, you're up, you know, come in, you know, this is your time to shine. Like you're sitting there thinking, I'm never going to get any minutes. I've been sitting on the bench for how long? And that one event, unfortunate, you know, that your joy comes on somebody else's misfortune, but you're able to come in and show up for the team. And this is one small example, but you don't know, nobody's prepared for that accident. We don't know what's going to happen. But we do need to be prepared. We do need to keep on doing what we want to be doing, what we're driving toward, what we're reaching for, to continue to do that. And something will open up for you.
You know, I was just going to say on a current event level as well too, you know, there's this whole issue of oil, and Pisces rules oil. And Putin recently announced that he was demanding payment, or he was going to shut it all down. And Biden just announced that he was dipping into the reserves, and Canada just said they were going to produce more. You know, there's a big issue right here around oil and all of that. And I think it is a circumstance that is making us all go a lot faster in making, you know, huge change, not little change, but big change that is so very necessary to our survival and our future, right?
And our environment.
Our environment, you know, the whole 9 yards, right?
All of a sudden, electric cars are going to be speeding up. Those conveyor belts are going to be moving really fast now. So you can see how that would produce something beneficial for the planet by speeding things up instead of dragging our heels. I mean, how long have we been talking about it? There's way more oil than we even know what to do with it. There is no shortage. We just have to redirect where we get it.
Yeah.
All
Out
right.
of loss comes gain, right?
Yes, exactly. All right, ladies, let's move to our next segment. Our fingerprint of the month. She has been all over the news for quite some time, and a lot of people backing her efforts to become more Aries-like in her life. So this is Britney Spears, and I'm going to pass the torch to Rob so she can give us a little background on her.
Yeah, where do I start with Britney? There's so much that's been in the media right now, but she's been around for centuries, it feels like, you know, since she was a little girl. Though in terms of her music, we've heard from her since she was a teenager, but she's actually been in show business since she was around about 3 or 4 years old. You know, starting off at school contests, and she performed her own kindergarten graduation on stage, and that's why she got the kind of interest into wanting to perform. And though in the 90s we first heard of her from the Mickey Mouse Club when she was a Disney TV show, she actually auditioned when she was 8 years old, but she was rejected for being too young. But that's when she came into the light of some talent agents, who then took her on and then explored her talents further. But then her first signing of her album was at 15, and she's actually got the record for the best-selling teenage artist in history to date. In terms of her first two albums becoming #1 worldwide, she's won a lot of accolades. She's been nominated for around 700 awards, and she's won around 380 of them. And that actually doesn't even include her 15 Guinness World Book records that she's broken. Yeah, I was very surprised to read that as well. And she's
What kind of Guinness Book of World Record has
like
she?
the youngest teenage artist. That includes that, you know, her first two albums, not only just her first album but also a second album, breaking that record as well. She's actually got a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that I wasn't even aware of, to be honest. I was just like, okay, because you think of her as in music rather than acting, though
Right.
she has done movies that we know of. And last year, Time magazine voted her as the 100th most influential person in the world. And that was in 2021, considering she's been around since the 90s and 2000s. So we know her musical career in terms of being the princess of pop, but she's as famous in her personal life and relationships, as we've seen in the last couple of years. So when it comes to her personal life, we know her parents kind of pushed her into, not pushed her, she's a natural performer. She loves performing. Her parents guided her into show business. And her mother was a school teacher back in her hometown, and her father was a building contractor. But what I wasn't aware of was the fact that her father was actually an alcoholic as well. That information, I don't know if that's been shared a lot, but I was surprised to find that out. Brittany herself, her parents actually got divorced in 2002 after 27 years of marriage. And Brittany herself went and got married at, well, we know her famous Las Vegas marriage of 55 hours. That was in 2004, I believe. And she then eventually got married in 2004. And she married Kevin Federline, who was a dancer, after 3 months of courtship. So she's someone that's gone into quick relationships quite fast. And that marriage actually ended after the birth of her second child, and the sons were born in 2005 and 2006. So she actually became a mother quite quickly the second time round as well. And following on from her divorce, that's when we kind of got in more information to do with her conservatorship, where her father and her attorney was given the rights, the legal rights, to make decisions on all her medical, financial, and personal decisions. And that's what's been in the media in the last year, as we all know. And she also, back in 2008, lost the custody of her two young sons. And she's been very vocal recently about the fact that it was motherhood that gave her a sense of purpose in her life. It was what gave her that balance that she was seeking. She's mentioned she's suffered from anxiety most of her life, and being a mother balanced that out. So just imagine losing her kids, you know, quite early on, would have that contribute to her anxiety just doubling, which it did, because we know about when she shaved her head in the media in front of paparazzi. And then she's actually gone on to say that she suffered anxiety from her father, which we found out later, post the conservatorship being cancelled last year, I believe it was. And that followed on from the Free Britney campaign, which was in 2020, where the media got more information in terms of how limited she was in that relationship with her family. Prior to that, it always seemed like Britney had more, I would say, like mental issues, or she wasn't stable. And last year, Brittany actually herself, for the first time, made a public statement in court stating that she was actually abused by her parent. Well, she said her family, her father, and management. And in November 2021, we know her conservatorship was actually terminated. And she's actually been quoted as saying, I've been in this censorship for 13 years. It's been a it's been a long time to be in a situation you don't want to be in. So I'm grateful for each day and being able to have the keys to my car, to be able to be independent and feel like a woman. Owning an ATM card, seeing cash for the first time, it's the little things. So just seeing what she's gone through in her life, and as we will analyze the chart, we'll see how it's all showcased in terms of her getting her freedom, I would say, and her being able to be her own person. And we can see that, first of all, with Pluto squaring the nodes in her chart. And Deva, if you would want to just expand on that.
Yeah, looking at Pluto square the nodes as a foundational principle, it signifies that the soul has been flip-flopping back and forth between two areas. And until there's a consistent integration on those skip steps, it's literally going to be like trying to turn something and you just don't move. That there has to be a full resolution and consistent effort on resolving those skip steps for forward momentum to happen. And looking at Brittany's chart, then based on what you shared, Rav, that Pluto being in Libra in the first house, squaring the South Node in Capricorn, conjunct Libra in the fourth, and North Node being in Cancer in the 10th, it's due to her own inner judgment and making lapses in judgment that she then gave up control essentially of her life, that she drew in people from the outside who she gave control to. It was kind of like saying, okay, I've lost trust and confidence in myself and in my own voice. So I'm literally going to hand it over to you so that you can make the calls. And then I won't have to decide anything for myself. And ending up in an extreme situation, as you were sharing, the conservatism
Yeah,
with her dad.
Yeah.
And literally losing control of almost everything in her life. And what she's doing now to counteract that is she's accepting responsibility in her own actions, seeing that the resolution node then is in Cancer in the 10th house, grounding around what gives her the most sense of value, that's being able to help her to rebuild her self-image from the inside out. North Node in the 10th in Cancer, being a mother. And that's going to be ruled by the moon in Aquarius in the 5th house, re-empowering herself, taking back control of her life, fully resolving that by stepping up and owning her lapses of judgment, but in such a way where she's rediscovering her own voice. Polarity point then being in Aries in the 7th, a new relationship pattern that's more balanced, that allows her to break free, to re-empower herself, and seeing that the ruler of that South Node is also a Saturn balsamic. I know, Rose, you're going to touch on that, bringing to closure a past cycle of being completely controlled. And by really building herself that foundation from the inside out and putting consistent effort there, the moon in Aquarius in the 5th, through rediscovering her talents. That it's not just being a singer on stage, but look at the positive self-worth, that nurturing others, being a mother, wanting to inspire others. I think one of her quotes that really, for me, kind of illustrates this is she says, too many people have had control in my life and it does not allow one to be who they really are. So there's Brittany going, I'm going to take back control. I'm going to give myself the keys again, and I'm going to be self-empowered. I'm going to essentially come into the social arena as a fully empowered adult, fully empowered woman who makes my own choices, have my own voice, and doesn't give up control to others.
Well, you can also see with her Venus conjunct the South Node of the moon in Capricorn, she's actually accumulating a cycle of where she's actually closing patterns of relationships in family environments where she's been repressed, controlled, where her voice hasn't been able to be, she's not allowed to speak, as you said, and it's because she's in a journey where she's trying to find her own self-mastery. She's had those family environments, the patriarchal blocks in previous incarnations, and it's just she's come into this incarnation with the story because she's looking to close that cycle, which we can see now in terms of the transit Pluto, which would have gone over her south node of the moon and her natal Venus in Capricorn. That opportunity presented itself, and she actually took the bull by its horns, and it's that Pluto in the first house in Libra, getting that balance right within herself and having been able to speak her truth, basically. And that goes on to the fact that her south node in Capricorn is ruled by Saturn in the first house Libra, which Rose was going to expand on for us.
Yes, thank you, Rav. And to also point out that Saturn is in the sign of Libra and Venus is in the sign of Capricorn, and that's a mutual reception between those two planets. Again, the South Node in Capricorn and Venus in Capricorn, which is the ruler of all that Libra that she has, including the ascendant there, is a very long, long cycle for her, a very long journey in terms of her reclaiming her power and being able to control her world and so forth. And as Deva said, losing her confidence and so forth, and then giving away her power. Libra is an archetype of being an extension of others' realities, right? And Libra is all about appearances. And it's a whole first house archetype there. Saturn, Pluto, Ceres, I would like to talk about that in a moment, and Pallas Athena and rising sign. That's a lot of Libra. So Saturn in Libra is a past life pattern of dependency on approval. And she's a performer, right? She came out the gate, as a child, all she wanted to do was perform, because that's where you find social acceptance, all of that. And so and Libra is the sign of the scales, and coming in with that signature, it's a real imbalance here, right? So there's an extreme desire to seek that social approval, and it's all about the appearance of, everything. And, it's so much there. Saturn is balsamic to the Pluto. So that indicates that a long journey is coming to an end. And Libra, the archetype itself, there's a necessity to explore diversity. So she has had to confront many different situations in terms of her own self-expression and her own relationship to the world around her and her relationship to herself. It's very interesting that she is called the Prince of Pop, the Princess of Pop, and yet she has identified herself as a slave. And that's it's from one extreme to another. It's a very, very interesting theme. Ceres is sitting there at 27 degrees Libra conjunct Pluto, and that's a new phase. So Saturn is balsamic, Ceres is new phase, and Ceres is in the mythology, that's the whole story of Demeter and Persephone and initiation, right? And I was thinking back to this and looking at her chart. Her first song that she burst on the scenes with was the schoolgirl. She's down the hallway with a little, oh baby, and it was like, kind of the fantasy, of the innocent maiden. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the song, but she was in, I think, performing in Las Vegas. She's got a boa constrictor around her, and she's really sexy. And I think it's "I'm a Slave for You." I think that's the song.
It is.
Yeah, and she goes from the innocent maiden to Persephone, queen of the underworld, right? That whole sexuality thing, and that's the whole breadth of all that Libra experience. And it's fascinating here. She's meant to explore a lot of diversity, because it is through contrast and comparison that we bring information back to self in order to learn. Interestingly, and she's meant to go through a number of relationships with all that first house. It's an Aries house. She's going to go through it fast. Fascinating in just terms of her parental influences as well too. Her parents were off on. They had one child, they separated. They had another child, they had Brittany, they separated. They had another child, they had the last child, right? And it was this off on, off on, off on. And that Saturn square the nodes, it's like, finishing off with the father. The series, is a statement of the mother. And at this point in time, I know that she was close to her mother and all that, but right now I think she's cut both of them out, right? So there's such a dynamic with the first house. She's going to bring back, and Saturn's all about the conditioning patterns, the conditioning patterns by which we identify ourselves. Saturn conditions everything else in the chart. With all of this imbalance here now, for her to be resolving that nodal axis, as Deva was saying, it is for her to take charge and to be in control, which is what she is doing right now with the conservatorship and so forth. But she's still got a lot of imbalance in her life. If you see some of the things that she's put on the, little, I don't know, TikTok or something,
Instagram, yeah.
She's not, she's probably with that signature bipolar, right? So she's now learning, now needing to have to control that as well too. So the end of the conservatorship, her getting her, her ability to control her life and her body, the fact that her father forced her to take meds and, and to have an IUD in, and, like everything. Now she will be on her own. I think it's the next level of decision-making process for her, right? So it will be fascinating to see what's next. I wanted to say one other thing. Jupiter and Scorpio sitting there as well too in the chart. Saturn, Pluto, Ceres, and Jupiter are all skip steps to that nodal axis. So there's, this is really a punched up, intensified life for Brittany to really make some really, really strong breakthroughs. And, the father, in terms of that dynamic of using, we would see the usury in that, in all of these symbols in actuality. So she's a fascinating study through the chart.
Yeah, no, 100%. And also with that Saturn, the fact that her fourth house cusp is Capricorn ruled, it's Saturn ruled, that whole family environment, especially the father, was always going to be a limiting factor from early childhood. And even in a way, her family have used her, if I can use the word, cash cow.
Yes. Yes.
It's to bring in that money. It was to make themselves feel more secure and established. So she's actually been working. You can see that hardworking element within Brittany. Her ascendant being Libra, the ruler is Venus in Capricorn. I've always thought on stage she's performing. She seems comfortable on stage, in terms of like she's enjoyed her music and stuff, because that's when she was singing and her voice is being expressed and explored. It was just hidden behind in the family environment. But then that also links to, I believe, from her soul level, the guilt factor that she's had from previous incarnations. And Stacie, you were going to explore the whole Mars and Virgo in the 12th house.
Yeah. So this is I just want to gather my thoughts for a minute because I have a slightly different perspective on some things than have been mentioned.
Well, maybe I'll just say too, in terms of that, the confusion that she would have had over her parents as well too, right? Because father is supposed to be Capricorn. All of the conditioning factors of the past that would say, father should be my protector, right? There was something I read where it said that the mother was there, in the early days, and I don't know, it was some producer or something, and said, I only met him once, and the only thing he said, the only thing he said to me is, my daughter is going to make so much money, she's going to buy me a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And right now he's got a lawsuit to bring her in for deposition. So he's like, despite the conservatorship over with, he's not letting go of her yet. And that's the skip step with that Saturn as well too, right? He still wants to tether her. And, and Jupiter and Scorpio not going to give up, right?
It had to come totally from Brittany and not listening to really anybody but her own voice. It could be even just as hypothetical that she'd be trying to communicate this, possibly reaching out for advice, and no, relative to the skip step. It was like she really had to get to a place to where she could do this full on consistently, or else, as you're saying, the intensity, it boxed her in so that it became essential. That there was really going to be no way out rather than her doing that, from what I'm hearing. And right, so all these conditions are accentuating, accelerating, and intensifying her essentially doing this without listening or without anybody else's approval or anybody else's input about what she should do in terms of resolving that guilt and retrusting her own judgment. And that would really be the only way, from my perspective, relative to that skip step, to really have it move forward. That there might have been experiences where, again, it was halfway and it just didn't make it, or it would go back. So from what you're saying, relative to the skip step, that she's in the process of resolving that by, exactly as you're saying, creating these situations where it's just totally boxed in.
and there's going to be a lot of them. It was a fascinating video clip to watch when she'd had this hiatus, and she was supposed to announce that she was going to resume her, Las Vegas residency or so on. And she was on stage there, and they were waiting for her to speak. And what did she do? Saturn, silence, right? She just walked down the stairs and walked out of the scene. And people were dumbfounded because she was supposed to announce that she was doing this residency. And she just quietly walked right through and off camera. It was an amazingly powerful moment.
Yeah.
I want to hear Stacie. I want to hear what Stacie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
When I said I needed a pause, I wasn't doing that to stall. My goodness. Okay, so with the Mars in Virgo, what you're going to have in the 12th, what you're going to have is an archetype of the personal will is really going to be focused on the ideals of perfection. And people have talked about confidence issues with Brittany. Here's what I have to say. She doesn't have confidence issues in her ability to perform. And this speaks to that Mars in the 12th house, because a lot of times what can happen is that Mars in the 12th house or Mars in Pisces can sometimes hone in on that strongest part of their being, that strongest part of their personality, and then over focus on it, and kind of make their whole reality around that one simple thing, because all of the other things seem so out of control. And you can see that with Brittany, because her life has been performing. And it's not that, in the beginning, it's not that she was forced to do these things. She wanted to do these things, and there just came a point where, after the Timberlake breakup, she spiraled. I mean, that's the timeline. She spiraled a little bit. What Rob mentioned, she married a guy from the hometown and annulled it hours later. later married Kevin Federline, and she started exhibiting all of this activity that people were very critical about, in a derogative way, you know, and it's almost as if the public was watching her and just kind of like, ha ha ha, like, ooh, what's she gonna do next? Oh, look how pathetic. It's like people were getting, I don't know, getting off on it a little bit. And, you know, meanwhile, you got to think of this person who is, you know, there's this Mars in Virgo in the 12th. She has a dream. She has a dream. She sees it. You know, Mars in the 12th house is bigger than life sometimes, right? And that is, we can objectively say what she is. She is larger than life. And it started at a very young age. And, you know, after she kind of lost the love of her life and started, it seemed that was a transition point where she started looking at other relationships. And see, I want to kind of point to this trine between Mars in the 12th in Virgo and Venus in the 4th in Capricorn. And this does show a pattern of defining relationships that feel emotionally comfortable for her. And so this is something that she's been sort of trying to explore. But with all of the control, Venus, 4th house, Capricorn, patriarchy, she didn't have the freedom. And if there's anything about Aries, it's that you require freedom to act when you have the instinct. And this woman could not ever do it. And, you know, relative to that Venus in the 4th in Capricorn, this is also showing like the definitions of the patriarchy of society. Like, you know, you're a girl, you shouldn't show your midriff, you know, you shouldn't swear, you shouldn't dance in a sexy way. But you know, as we can see, like her North Node is here in the 10th house in Cancer. And you know, that's forming a sextile to that Mars in Virgo in the 12th house, which means that's an opportunity. So, and we've got skip steps here, right? So Venus in the 4th, you know, so Mars trining Venus in the 4th, you know, which gives her this absolute just natural capacity to draw emotional whatever, but it's not exactly lining up with the family life, right? So she's got two different lives that she's living. I don't know if I'd say bipolar. I would just say that literally the context of her life is that she's got to perform. And when she's not performing, there isn't really a family there. And so this has been necessary because one of the things about Mars in the 12th in Virgo is about experiencing our essential aloneness. It's a very important lesson. We've got to go through it. We've got to know what it feels like. And then we've got to do the self-analysis. Why am I feeling this way? And with that trine to Venus in the 4th house in Capricorn, she's really getting to the bottom of her patterns and her upbringing. And, you know, why am I this way? Why can't I do this? And then she starts to objectify her life. And she starts to see like, wait a minute, I'm making millions for people. Why don't I feel good enough? Right? Which is another Mars and Virgo in the 12th theme. And this process has been necessary because it has just made her so Aries angry that she's like, okay, wait a minute now. And she's taking account of herself and she's saying, I put on these shows, I'm employing all these people, everyone's making money, and yet I don't have the freedom to just express myself. One moment. My throat gets dry when I talk fast. And so, you know, so I talked about this trine to Venus and all of these dynamics that are caught up in it. But we also want to look at the sextile to the North Node in Cancer in the 10th house. So sextiles are opportunities, like even more so than trines. Like trines are more like natural. It's already established and natural. Sextiles are more of an opportunity. Like you take it or you leave it. And the way that I see this chart and all of these dynamics is that this whole conservatorship thing was that thing that needed to bring her into that state of essential aloneness that made her so angry. And she just had to deal with all that pent up energy that she wasn't able to express at her free will. you know, and that sextile, we're talking Cancer, right? She needs, so what the process is here is going within and like really reflecting on her own emotional dynamics and the thoughts in her head, Virgo, and doing all of that self-analysis and really evaluating for herself, like, is this, you know, is this what I consider good, or is this what I consider, not listening to other people, Libra, but doing it for herself, becoming her own authority. And, you know, in so doing, like we see the ruler of that North Node, Moon in Aquarius in the 5th. That means expressing yourself exactly how you want to express yourself when you want to. And this is the thing that society has criticized her about. It's the thing that her family was trying to control. And, you know, by going to court, like, I don't know if anyone ever heard her statement at the end, but it was powerful. It's like she had done all that reflection and she's like, wait a minute, I wasn't just good, I was great. And, you know, I'm being prevented from doing these things, and yet I'm paying, like I am, they are surviving off of me. And so it's like she found that worth in doing that work of self-analysis, emotional exploration, and taking it back to the system. And so she's on the right track.
Stacie, that was passionate. That was
Sorry.
No, you've just nailed it in terms of her following her natural path. And Kristin, you were going to talk about her natural Lilith, and conjuncting her Venus and her South Node. If you could just mention.
Absolutely. What I love about the asteroids, in original Lilith, we see her at 22 degrees Capricorn on the South Node, on the Venus. We're also going to include Amazon, which is the female warrior over there, on her Mars. Come on, look at this pairing. It's ridiculous.
Right.
There is no way she was not going to pull it off in this lifetime. Mars is in such a phenomenal position. And then you put Lilith on the South Node, trining her Amazon. Forget it. Game over. She's winning. It's going to be like, it's just going to take some time. It's going to take some Capricorn time, little late bloomer. You know, she was very emotionally arrested as a child because she was constantly diverting her energy to the stage instead of to the inner experience of life and of emotion. Everything was projected outward. And so none of that necessary inner emotional development was allowed to occur, not to mention for lifetimes, everything had been held back, repressed, you know, a slave to her world, a slave to these gifts. Like, who wants these gifts if you can't have your own keys to the car, your own ATM, your own change in your pocket? Who wants those gifts, you know? So she had to realize that, you know, in order to have it all, she was going to have to let go of her entire past, in a sense, right? Everything that led up to this point, have to be willing to completely be on her own, to close that door. And I'm going to ask you guys something. What is the most powerful thing that an emotional mobilizer, when you're in a relationship and somebody ghosts you or goes silent? Nothing is more of a trigger for people. So when she didn't show up for her shows, when she went silent and said, forget it, she literally did this Mars in the 12th house thing. You know, all those people that were making money off her, guess what? They couldn't if she wasn't going to show up and sing. It required her to physically get on that stage, sell those tickets. And so that was, you know, her way of saying, I'm not going to utter another word until, you know, something happens here. I don't know how long that went on for, but that's what I remember reading about. So silence and removal of your energy can be as powerful or more than actually saying what Stacie, you know, shared in terms at the end of that court case. They both need to happen. Instead of pleasing or, you know, doing the Libra thing where she kept getting caught up. And as any child wants to please their parents, every child wants to be close to your parents, you know, and so at some point when you're old enough and you are a parent and you don't have that same kind of attachment, you're willing to take certain risks because you're not willing for things to continue to repeat. And so the Lilith archetype in Capricorn on the South Node in its original form, in its pure unconditioned form, is I am the boss of myself. Nobody tells me what to do. I am in charge. With the trine to Mars, with the trine to Amazon in Virgo in the 12th. And so that's, in fact, what she is reclaiming, her original essence. Of course, you can see the distortions in that same symbol with what happened with her family and her father. And the resolution sits in that same symbol, to become inwardly, emotionally whole into herself, needing nobody outside of herself to make decisions for herself or to complete her or anything else. And, and even getting bad criticism from the press and reaching out to people and asking about it. And a friend of hers saying, even Madonna got criticism. She didn't care. And look at her, so just saying, this is who I am, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And put yourself on the stage, you're going to become a target for these things. So anyway,
That's right.
I love those symbols. And lastly, just to say that the whole story is there without the Lilith, without the Amazon, but what the asteroids do so beautifully, as Rose mentioned with the Ceres, etc., is that they fill in the details. They actually further substantiate what you're already seeing. They just give it more girth and more gusto and more depth and just more fervor. And so that's what they do. That's why these asteroids are so much fun to work with. And Amazon is very much an Aries energy, a female warrior. Lilith as well. She is going to protect. She will defend. She will go to the mat in Capricorn in her most powerful original form.
Yeah. And just finally, with Pluto going into Aquarius in the next, I think it's next year, isn't it? And that will be transiting her 5th house. Will be moving up to her natal moon as well over the next few years. She's going to be expressing herself creatively a lot more. It's like she'll be finding her childhood again, being able to feel the child that she wasn't able to be. Yeah.
I so agree with that. That is brilliant. Yes, she will.
Well, they say that Capricorns age in reverse, so she was a little girl on so, but she was forced to grow up fast, right? Being on the stage, she's also now being able to recover that youth and recover that woman that she is, the feminine, that inner child at the same time.
Yeah.
All right, awesome, you guys. I loved everything that you all contributed. I just have such a full sense of her now, even though we all kind of feel like we know who she is, just following her in that way. All right, so the theme today is the courage of Aries, and we have a new segment. It's called the Star of the Month. So I'm going to initiate this with my fellow Bruin. This is my alumni school. I'm an alumni here, and this is Jack Drinker. And I thought a lot about Jack in terms of the Star of the Month. He's a Taurus, but he has Venus and Mercury in the sign of Aries in the 1st house. But Jack is our Star of the Month for many reasons. He came out in high school and he experienced a lot, I would say, of, well, I'm sure there was a little bit of bullying going on, but discrimination and things like that. He's a lover of being on stage himself, and he loves music and loves musical theater, but he felt he was discriminated against for being maybe too feminine for this role or that role. But I want to celebrate this soul for having the courage to unapologetically be who he is, to really put himself out there. He experienced a ton of depression, still does. And so sometimes he'll introduce himself as the queer pop singer, songwriter who writes an anthem about mental health. So he really does say, this is who I am. I'm a queer singer, songwriter, and I want to sing about it. I want to express myself. So it wasn't only just about his mental health. Actually was not because of being gay and that the judgment of that. He has extremely supportive family. It was just more about just the mental health that he experienced, the depression. Who am I, after months of just darkness and not being able to come out of that. But just also his own identity. We'll play his music here, a song he wrote. You can listen to the lyrics with his chart, but it was really this loss of identity, like Brittany, really, about, doing things for other people or doing things to make other people happy, with Venus squaring his nodes he has here in Aries. And so I want you all to listen to the lyrics here. We're going to learn a little bit about more what he is doing in his life and how he is helping other people with his music so they don't feel so alone.
lying in bed, can't get up. Why do I always fall back to square one? Cause I'm happy and I'm sad like it's nothing. 4 cups of coffee to just get one thing done. I downplay all of my successes. I always think there's a glitch in the system. I blame all of my flaws on my exes. Guess I'm just comfortable playing the victim. But it isn't my fault, no it never is. Cause I've become someone who doesn't quite exist. No, I'm not comfortable in my skin. You may think I'm fine, but it's been a while since I didn't have to rely on my therapist. Who is this person? Who is this person? And when I look in the mirror, all I see are the lies that I tell everyone when I say I'm alright. I'm not comfortable in my skin. Who is this? Who is this person? The simplest tasks don't come easy, cause I just give up thinking nobody needs me. Can't even tie my shoes without taking a break. Wanna hide far away, but I'm running in place. And why did I wanna be skin and bones? Cause soon all that be left of me is those. No, I don't know why I ever let people change me, cause I've never been your clay to mold. But it isn't my fault that I haven't been quite myself. Cause when people say you're not good enough, you start to think of yourself. No, I'm not comfortable in my skin. You may think I'm fine, but it's been a while since I didn't have to rely on my therapist. Who is this person? Who is this person? And when I look in the mirror, all I see are the lies that I tell everyone when I say I'm alright. I'm not comfortable in my skin. Who is this? Who is this person? I don't know who I am. No, I'm not comfortable in my skin. You may think I'm fine, but it's been a while since I didn't have to rely on my therapist. Who is this person? Who is this person? And when I look in the mirror, all I see are the lies that I tell everyone when I say I'm alright. I'm not comfortable in my skin. Who is this? Who is this person?
All right. Well, with that Venus squaring the nodes, one of the things he said is like the first time he fell in love, he didn't know how to deal with it. So he lost a lot of weight and he allowed other people to mold him or to try and mold him versus him just being who he was. And this was in high school. And so he said it ended up ruining him, you know, always trying to please people, make choices, please others. And so what he's doing now is he's writing his own stories, taking back the narrative really. And he said he works very hard every day to be more authentic and to be more authentically himself. And so I just wanted to celebrate Jack today. He's a wonderful singer-songwriter. He's doing some musical theater and he's just doing everything he can, in my opinion, to recover that skip step and to express his fingerprint at a really young age. So I just want to know if anyone had any comment to say about the chart before we close.
Lovely song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not comfortable in my skin with that South node in Capricorn in the 10th, right?
Yeah.
He talked about just how he was so tired he couldn't even tie his shoes because of the depression. So it's reflecting for lifetimes, repressing what is natural and repressing his independence or his individuality. And so I really feel he'll be recovering that this lifetime. Right. All right. We can move to the next slide. Thank you, Jack.
Woohoo!
Walk your own
That was
path.
amazing.
That is definitely what this is about. Make choices for ourselves that feel natural, that feel authentic, that feel like they reflect our natural design. And so my closing inspirational quote, got the slide here. I don't know if she added that, did she? There we go. All right, we think of bravery, we think of courage with Aries, but remember the polarity is Libra. And I love this quote here, the person who is bravest does not base their love on how much they are getting back. The person who is bravest does not need the validation of another person's reciprocation in order to love freely. The bravest person simply does what comes most naturally to him or her, and that is to love.
Beautiful.
So more love, less war.
Yeah.
It was wonderful to be back with all of you. Thank you, Rob and Deva and Rose and Stacie and Sue and Robin in the background. And we'll be back soon. Oh, also, again, to honor Linda Johnson and all these contributors to this wonderful book on natural astrology through the houses, signs, and planets. Check it out if you haven't. It is on Amazon. And all of our guests, well, minus Rob, you'll have your own book one day, we know. I'm sure. Check it out there. And also, if you haven't been to the website, schoolofelevolutionaryastrology.com, and you're interested in becoming a student of this incredible work, please check it out. You can access the original teachings of Jeffrey Wolf Green, the original school there as well. Until next time, namaste.